Hi, future me, and whoever's also watching. So, I just got out of a saloon titled Network Minds: The History and Future of Collaboration, hosted by Bryan and Isabela. I got out of it literally 2 minutes ago. It is currently almost 1 a.m. here, which is great. The saloon was 3 hours and a half long. The flow was amazing. I'm pumped. So, I decided to record this before going to sleep. Also, I have like a shit ton of notes on a random paper that I just let lying around. Um, and yeah, as I said, the first of all, it was the biggest saloon I've attended. I've only attended three, so that there's not that much to compare with. But there were like 40 people there, around that. So it was a lot of people. It was very different. The amount of intimacy and room to talk was very different from the other saloons I attended. But it was also great. Everyone had their time to talk. And as I was saying, it was about the future and history of collaboration. And so we started by introducing ourselves and giving an example of what great collaboration means to us. Yeah, sorry if I'm looking a lot at the notes. I'm just mentally tired, and it's impossible to remember all of these points in 2 minutes. And so yeah. Straight out of the bat, Isabela said that everyone could just self-promo, which I thought was pretty cool. Usually in these kinds of saloons and workshops, not specifically Interintellect, but other communities, you have a lot of those restrictions of like, don't say your profiles or what you're working on and whatever, because otherwise it will just turn into a bunch of just shitty self-promoting. But here, anyone could do it and people respect that. And there was a very interesting thing while people were telling their stories of themselves and great collaborations they had in their lives, which was they mentioned TTM, time to meta. Apparently that, I don't know if that's a thing that is done in II saloons. Maybe it is, maybe it wasn't, but it was 21 minutes to meta. And then we mentioned in Temporal, I'm just gonna put the paper here. We mentioned in Temporal collaborators. So in a sense, this was mentioned by someone that was talking about, imagine you collaborate with someone and then you never talk with them again. But then like after 5 years you talk with them again and you still collaborate greatly with them. So that like unlinks the collaboration from the fact that you always have to be working together. We also talked about transcendent interests, which was something that I had never heard I knew what it is, but I had never heard the name, which is pretty much when you get a bunch of people together and then a new interest emerges from the group instead of from the individuals. So if you take any of the individuals out of that group, they no longer have that interest, but they do when they're in the group, which is a pretty cool dynamic, and I've seen it happen in tons of places in my life. And then someone mentioned purposefully building teams. And they mentioned something that was pretty surprising to me, at least. It was in the context of building teams to start a company, and they mentioned that people don't have to be friends. They have to like be productive together. I don't know if I necessarily agree, but that's not the point of this video. And they have a larger data set to test, so it's not like something they said just straight off their mind. So that was pretty interesting. I want to know more about that. We also talked a lot about top-down approaches and bottom-up and top-down balance when collaborating. Like there needs to be a certain structure, but there also needs to be a certain flatness so that everything works, which makes a lot of sense. For me, I'm more of a like flat approach guy, but with clear goals. That what works for me is like flat approach, clear goals, and everyone working. And I had this note here saying collaboration is a system of many parts. I'm not entirely sure why I wrote this. But yeah, of course, collaboration. Oh, I know what it is. Someone was telling a story about how they are in a sport, and then all of a sudden the collaboration is not only between the team, but also the coaches and the people that do the laundry for the team and the people that are cheering for them. It's a whole like collaborative system instead of being just a person or just a team. It's usually greater than that. And it was pretty great when someone started talking about the earlier social networks. And so I thought of Friendster and MySpace, but no, they were talking like 1700 years ago when people gathered around the fireplace and just told things to each other and drew on the walls and whatever. Those were the real first social networks, which is pretty cool to think about that. Now, when we think of social networks, we always connect it to technology or some kind of social media, something like that. But they have existed way before any of us. And we also because we touched on these like first social networks, we started to talk about the constraints of collaborating online, of not being able to touch each other, to feel the presence, but also the lack of constraints online. Like in this talk, there were people from all around the globe, all types of time zones, very different backgrounds, very different ages, and like, how else would you do something like this if not online? Like, sure, it's possible, but come on, online is just easier. And what is this? Oh, yeah, we also in the topic on the topic of barriers and constraints, we also touched on the language barrier, of the fact that when you have to collaborate with someone that doesn't speak well your main language, or you don't speak well the other person's main language, you need to be pretty clear about what you're saying, and like, don't use funny words or metaphors or some things that you might consider trivial, but to the other person can really confuse them. And I wanted also to mention here how much people smile, at least in this saloon, and I also noticed it in the other saloons. A lot of people are on their little squares on Zooms, just like, which I find pretty amazing, because they smile pretty much throughout the whole 3.5 hours. Their cheeks must hurt. And the chat is just insane on a saloon with 40 or 30 people. It's insane. I honestly find it hard to keep up with, so I don't interact much with the chat, but that's more of a me problem. Some people really go hard on the chat, and that's amazing for them. And yeah, then we also start to discuss more into the future of collaboration. And we touched literally on future collaborations, in the sense that somehow that there are people that you have never collaborated with, or you've collaborated with them on like a single project or something, but you somehow know that you're going to collaborate with them in the future in something. You don't know what, you're not rushing it, but you know that you're going to collaborate with that person further down the line eventually. For me, that person is Aziz. Aziz, if you're watching this, I'm not going to tell you, but if you make it to this part of the video, cheers to you. And someone made this really cool metaphor of like the relationship being pregnant with collaboration. I found it pretty hilarious. And it was also mentioned that in another important thing in collaboration is competition. So one person trying to, what's the word? Go above and beyond, and the other person trying to keep up with it. And if you're competitive, you become a catalyst for collaboration, because competition is in itself a catalyst for collaboration. Of course, good competition, not toxic one. And someone mentioned a really interesting topic, or a question, which was, can we collaborate with people from the past and imaginary characters? And for me and for most people in the saloon, or at least the ones that talked, survivorship bias here, was yes, that you can collaborate with people who you've never actually met, but you've read a lot about them, or you've researched, or you've seen them in a film or something. And that happens mentally a lot of times if you think about it. Like you're talking about a certain topic, and you think about someone that knows a lot about that topic, and you just know, okay, what would that person think about it? And there's no reason why you cannot do that with fictional characters, or like people you idolize from the past. I don't know, a friend. Okay, I was gonna say a friend that has died, but that's way too morbid for here. Sorry. Okay, let's see what's next. Collaboration with the past and fictional characters. I've talked about that. Oh, also someone talked a little bit about the flow and the importance of the flow of collaboration, or of the flow of energy between collaborators, which is insanely important. I cannot stress enough how much of my personal good and bad collaborations melted down to the flow of energy between the people. When the flow is good, you just know things are going to go well. Things are going to go well. It doesn't matter if you're going in the right or wrong direction. Eventually, things are going to go well if the energy that is passing between people is good. And we talked about the importance of the human being on with whom you are collaborating. So let's imagine you're working on a design. I'm going to say design because I'm from that field, on a very intensive design project, and you know that person professionally. So you tend to always talk about design and design related stuff and work stuff. But it is also important to acknowledge that you are both people. And so just forget the topic of design for a while and be like, hey, how did your day go? That is obviously super important in collaboration, because you can keep a like strictly professional relation for a while, but if you want to move a step further, at least in my opinion, you do have to move into that more human interaction. And that was also related to collaborating with people with who we don't know. So like get to know them first, maybe, if you're into that, or if that's valuable in any way. If you don't think that's valuable, don't. And then we moved on to talking about tools. We spent like the rest of the saloon, maybe it was like an hour, I don't know, talking about tools specifically. So that ranges from pen and paper to like keyboards and specific softwares. And so everyone, there's a consensus that tools shape your thinking. If you use Twitter for long enough, you start to think in tweets, which is pretty disturbing. I've thought of a few tweets. And in the same way, if you use Rome, you start to automatize your whole thinking. If you use pen and paper, maybe you optimize for lengthy phrases. I don't know, because I don't do it that much, unfortunately. And also, mostly with the digital tools, a lot of people mention wanting to use them to augment your memory, because we're humans, we forget shit. Forgetting things is super important. Forgetting things is like part of who we are, and it helps us cope up with things. But let's not talk about that now. There are certain things that we forget that we don't want to forget, and so we want to use tools to augment our memory, and maybe even social tools. So, for example, someone mentioned, and I discovered this new social note-taking tool that is called Hypothesis. And basically, people go online and just note things, and then you can pick up on their notes and like draw conversation from there. I installed it right away when that person described it. And social note-taking tools are super cool to me, because you get to think with other people. So like networked minds are already happening. You can already collaborate pretty much in real time with people online, whether that's through texts, tweets, videos, voice, or any other way. Networked minds already happen. So that's pretty dystopian to think about, that maybe in the near future you're going to be able to upload someone's entire personal library into your Neuralink chip, and bam, you know Kung Fu. And yeah, the fact that you can pick up from other people's thoughts in real time is just amazing, because you kind of develop your own thoughts faster in a way, and in directions that you naturally wouldn't. And that's also a topic that was mentioned, because for example, when you're writing an email now, it suggests text that you add, and okay, that's all great, that saves you time, but that also unifies everyone's writing, because what the program is doing is taking a large data set and applying it to everyone, and so everyone will start to speak or write in the same way that is happening with algorithms on social media, where you're seeing like giant blocks of people becoming like centered around the same ideas, and that's obviously not good. You must know how to play with the algorithm. But again, I'm just getting sidetracked. The energy around online collaboration during the pandemic. Oh yeah, this was a cool topic. Someone mentioned that maybe this new, like the fact that people are talking so much about collaborative tools now is not because of the technology itself, but because of the pandemic. Because the pandemic turned everyone into an internet nerd, into an internet weirdo that talks with each other through little screens and has to type a bunch. And that's something that didn't happen before. So like for people like me who were already online, and I'd guess most of the people on that saloon are also like that. I might be completely wrong. That is kind of normal, but for a lot of people that didn't interact a lot with computers outside of like strictly for work, this is a whole new thing, and so they're exploring new tools, and there's more buzz around these tools, and so you get the sense that these tools are evolving a bunch in the last year, when the reality is that they've existed for a while. Like someone mentioned, Wikipedia took 10 years to take off, so it's not like something just appeared now. Um, then another interesting thing was someone mentioned that sometimes we only notice collaboration when we have absence of it. For example, if every conversation I have went as well as this saloon, I would never notice like how collaborative and how good the flow of energy was. But when things break, when there's that awkward silence, you're like, oh shit, okay, there's no collaboration here. Um, and someone said a really interesting phrase, which I took note of. That was taking notes to increase the surface area of I can't say this word. Serendipity, yeah, taking notes to increase the surface area of serendipity, and that the conversations and note taking are like gathered or are structured around synchronicity, temporality, and symmetry or asymmetry. This is a really like good frame to think about note taking and to think about collaboration in general. And they went on to explain what each of them means. I'm not gonna do it right now. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. And we closed by talking about the problems with the perpetuity of software. So, for example, all of the things we are doing now online are being registered. They're not going to be forgotten, like ever, unless the internet ever goes to shit. And that's bad because, as I mentioned before, forgetting things is important. And also the fact that all of what we're doing is being used to train algorithms, and some things really should be forgotten, will kind of drift us all into I don't know, into paths that we wouldn't normally go to, whatever normally means. But yeah, but I'm not gonna get into that topic now. I'm way too tired. Okay, it's officially 1 a.m. And yeah, I just wanted to finish with a note that this saloon or salon was the perfect example of collaboration. Like kudos for that. Okay, I've been going for 18 minutes. This is way too long. So yeah, thank you for everyone involved. Thank you to Bryan and Isabela for hosting it. Thank you to everyone who collaborated. This was amazing. Yeah. See you in the next saloon.